Hey everyone, so SKYTRAK has a new update with tons of new features to help golfers improve in a variety of ways. I have a few things that I'm working on, so Josh is going to show me how this update can help me with my game.
Cool. Yeah, so let's talk a little bit first about like the things you're working on in your own game. So
yeah.
Give me the rundown.
So biggest thing is accuracy with my long irons.
Okay.
9-8-7, good-ish, but once it gets to 6 and 5, I'm really struggling.
Okay.
And then also knowing how to adjust my swing if it's not like, if I know I'm not hitting it at 100%, I'm not doing a full swing, then
sure.
Knowing how to do like a 3/4 swing, half swing, how far that's gonna go. And then last thing's adjusting to different conditions on the course. So if I hit it in the rough, I struggle being able to know how to adjust my swing in that situation.
Totally. So that makes perfect sense. So there's a couple ways that you can use the new updates in SKYTRAK to practice that if you're like Lexi or if you're somebody else that has some other issues. So one of the really cool ones is the ability to drop anywhere. So when you're talking about especially your longer irons, that's a really useful way to go on to a par 5 like we have up here, or just a longer par 3 potentially. Set yourself up in whatever position you want. You can practice that shot over and over and over. That would be a really good way for everybody out there to just build some confidence with those particular clubs that you might struggle with.
Cool,
So,
should we go through that one?
Yeah, we can definitely look at that one. So that would be a good one to kind of kick things off. Let's start with there.
Okay, so using the drop anywhere feature, I'm gonna go up to the cogwheel here and I can drag my marker to the spot on the course that I want to hit from. So I know that hopefully I can hit my 6 about 165.
Okay.
Potentially over that, and
so even that I would say is a good way to figure out your yardages.
Okay.
So you kind of talked a little bit about just not being super confident with those longer clubs. This would be a great way for everybody at home to put yourself on the course, go to a specific yardage, hit the club you think you need, and then see where you're ending up relative to where the hole is.
Cool.
It's just another way to do it versus hitting balls on the range.
Definitely. Makes it a little more interesting. I'll give you that and grab my 6 iron. My palms are sweating just a little.
Knees weak, arms are heavy?
Just a little bit. Luckily there's not vomit on my shirt already.
That's good. That's good. Eminem will be proud.
Okay. Ooh, I sliced that one.
Yep, a little off to the right.
Yikes.
It's all right. So again, what I would do when you're practicing this stuff, that's a good example of a shot that obviously you don't love to see. I would start to just kind of keep track of, if I hit 10 balls, where are they eventually like ending up? So that would be a really good way to say, okay, if I hit 10 shots, 80% of them are within, let's say, 20 yards of the edge of the green.
Yeah.
That would mean you have a pretty good grasp on that particular club and that particular skill. If you notice that it's maybe like 20% are near the edge of the green, it's probably something you need to spend a little bit more time on and continue to work through. So that one right there, we would obviously put in the percentage we don't want. So let's try one more.
Let's see if we can get a higher percentage,
Sounded a little better.
I definitely had the elevation cranked up so high because this is not what I was hitting earlier.
So that's fine. So even there, I would say, you know, that ball carries 141. I don't think you hit that perfectly. That would be kind of a good way to, again, just gauge where you're at. And if you notice, Lexi, as you go through this, and this is for everybody at home too, like if you go through and you hit 10 shots and you think the average distance is 165, well, if you notice that it's only 150, you might have to adjust what you're doing when you get on the course. So this is just another way to apply your practice to what you're actually doing when you go play, and just can help you essentially get the ball closer to the hole more often because you'll pick the right club.
Definitely. So when I'm working on my 3/4 shots, full shots, half shots, what would you suggest that I do with the SKYTRAK update? So
one of the most common things I hear from people, especially when you're talking about just varying the distance of the shot that they're hitting with a specific club, is typically with your wedges. So you get inside of that 100-yard distance and you're like, man, my sand wedge or my pitching wedge is my 100-yard club, and then when I get to 85 yards, I don't know what to do. So same kind of thing, you could use this drag and drop feature to hit from anywhere as a way to practice that. So like, we'll just use this hole as the perfect example. How far do you hit your sand wedge on a normal shot?
I think maybe 90.
Okay, so if I take you to, we'll just say 100, and then what I'm gonna do up here is I'll just move the hole location.
Okay.
So that can give us a little bit better sense of like where you're at. So like 90 is a full sand wedge. What's a full pitching wedge for you?
Maybe 110.
So like that 100-yard shot's probably pretty tough.
Yeah.
Okay, so there you go. So you figure out kind of where that cutoff is. For you, it's right around 100. We'll just say 97 in this example. So in order to practice this, what I would do is I would grab the club that I hit the 110, so my pitching wedge, and then I would start working on what I need to feel or what I need to be thinking about in order to execute a 3/4 or a 2/3 type of a shot.
Okay.
So generally when I'm teaching people, there's a lot of different ways that you can vary distance with your clubs. One of the easiest is just to think about the length of the backswing.
Okay.
So don't change anything as far as the speed, just don't take the club back quite so far. So for you, something that would be valuable for everybody, not just yourself, Lexi, would be, practice your backswing to your hip high with a pitching wedge, see how far that goes. Practice the backswing to chest high with a pitching wedge, see how far that goes. Practice your backswing to a full length, however far back that is, see how far that goes. So then you could basically build like a table for yourself of how far each of those wedges would go, and using the drag and drop feature, you can go anywhere on the course and practice that, would be a really good way to do that. So just go to different yardages and practice hitting shots and see what length of swing you need in order to get the ball to travel that far. Cool. So for you, if 110 is kind of your total distance with your pitching wedge, let's practice one where we just go to like chest high. Okay. So kind of like a 3/4 type of length, and let's see what we get.
Okay, let's do it. So like,
I'd go maybe just a touch further, but yeah, somewhere in that neighborhood right there. That's probably not your full length of backswing. And really what's important, I think, for everybody to recognize too is it doesn't really actually matter how far back you go. It's more of just your perception of it. So like, you might go a little bit past chest high when you actually hit the ball. Yeah. But whatever that feel or that thought generates for you is really what you're looking for as far as the distance. So you might be thinking it's 3/4. On video, it might be 4/5. Okay. But it creates the shot that goes 100 yards. So don't worry necessarily about, does it actually go to chest high or does it actually go to hip high? It's like, that's what your intention is. If you go a little bit past it or a little bit short of it, it's not the end of the world.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense.
So that one's probably not quite hard enough, I would guess.
I hit that one very short.
It's okay. And so there's, again, this is the value of doing this, is like, and you could do this on the range too. You don't have to do it on the drag and drop feature. It's just to your point. I think it makes it a little bit more of a realistic experience. This would be beneficial for you to continue to practice over and over, just so you can get a sense for, okay, this is my 3/4 pitching wedge. Yeah. This is my half sand wedge, or whatever that is. You might have some overlap here and there, but it just gives you a lot more, basically, room to customize your game when you get on the course. You can go, oh, I have a 50-yard shot. That's either a full lob wedge or a half sand wedge, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes, well, most of the time when I do take my club back to quarter length, 3/4 lengths, I also like slow down my club speed. Yeah. Significantly more than I probably should. Yeah. So this is definitely a good drill for me to actually see how far and how much I'm slowing down.
And that's one way people vary speed, is they like slow down how fast they move the club. Yeah. Generally, I have found that that's very inconsistent for players. So a good thought for you is like, don't change anything with your delivery. Okay. You're just changing how far back you're going. You're still maintaining the same amount of speed and pace on the way through. It's just you're not going back quite as far.
Okay. Okay, let's do it.
Added a little bit more pace to it.
I still slowed it down more than I probably would have.
Yeah, but you can see there, that's more kind of in your 90-ish range of what you'd be looking for. So that was much more true to what I think your actual pace of your swing is. So that would be a really good way to practice this. Do that 5-10 times, get kind of an average baseline for where you're at. And then you can use that number as a way to, when you actually get on the course and play, to go, okay, I have an 80-yard shot, it's this.
Yeah, cool. Hit a few more.
There you go. That's probably more of what you're looking for.
Oh yeah.
Great shot.
Thank you.
So there's your 95 to 100-yard shot. So kind of that 3/4-ish length with your pitching wedge. If you hit a full one, I'm sure it would go over the flag and probably towards the back of the green. So that would be a really cool way. You could find a spot on the fairway, and that's the beauty of the drag and drop feature, is you don't necessarily have to move where you're hitting from. You could just move the whole location. And so then that again could provide you with some practical application when you play. You go, oh, it's a front pin. That's a 3/4 pitching wedge. It's a back pin. It's a full pitching wedge. you know, things like that, where you can actually start to plan and kind of strategize what you would do in an actual round using a simulator as a way to do it.
Yeah, and I know that there's different strategy based on if the pin is at the front of the green or the back of the green, because we've gone over that briefly. I honestly am not very good at that in making those judgment calls of what to do. So what would you recommend as the strategy for if there's a front pin location, back pin location, and how you could practice that here?
Yeah, so I think a lot of it, we'll just zoom into the green here, has to do with kind of what's around.
Okay.
So obviously you're not gonna have a pin location where it's right on the fringe like we have here. That's never gonna happen when you play unless you're playing in like a really mean tournament. But if that pin is in the front, let's call it front third of the green, so kind of where the cursor is, I'm just outlining this right here.
Okay.
Look at all the trouble that's around that. So part of it is understanding and identifying, all right, there's a lot of bunkers here. There's some issues with where, you know, potentially I could land this golf ball.
Yeah.
Whereas if you look, I'll just kind of zoom this out. You start to look kind of at the back half of the green, like, yeah, there's bunkers back here, but really it's a pretty easy chip shot from the rough and kind of the surrounding areas.
Yeah.
So it could be something where if this pin is in the front third, you're still picking a target that's like the middle to even the back part of the green and just saying, you know what, I'm gonna accept my 20, 30, 40 foot putt. Hopefully I two putt from there and I make par.
Yeah.
Not a big deal. Or, you know, you could look at it from more of an aggressive perspective and say, hey, I'm gonna start picking a target that's a little closer to the flag. Just recognize and understand if you mishit it, ending up in this or over in this bunker here where you don't have a lot of green to work with, could just make things more challenging for you when it comes to a score. So that's, I think, where the benefit of, you know, going through some of this stuff with a coach can help you kind of identify where your strengths, where your weaknesses are. But I would say for the majority of players, Lexi, yourself, most of what we're talking to the viewers out there, generally speaking, you shouldn't be picking a target anywhere in front of the middle part of the green.
Okay.
Because most of the players that I teach and that I see don't actually hit the ball as far as they think they do.
Okay.
They think they hit it 150, it actually goes 130, and so then the ball ends up here or in this bunker, and now that's just a recipe for creating higher scores.
Yeah.
So that's a general rule of thumb. I would always say, like, find a target that's kind of the middle to even the back half of the green, pick that as your yardage, and swing the club that you would choose for that distance.
Yeah. Like with this situation, it's cool because you have where you're hitting and you can see like where you often miss, so you can know like situationally if you go on a course and there's a bunker to the left, well, if you typically do a leftward miss, then it might be better to adjust and maybe aim a little bit more right. So it's kind of understanding how to personalize your strategy as well, which I think is pretty cool.
And we don't really see it necessarily on this hole.
Yeah.
But there are instances where you'll have a hole that has a forced carry.
Yeah.
You have to hit it X amount of yards to get it over water, to get it over a bunker, or whatever the case may be. Like, that's another really good way to use this drop anywhere feature.
Yeah.
Is find a hole location or find a golf hole that you play that has one of those forced carries and start to hit some shots, like approach shots to that green, and identify like, okay, if the yardage is 130 and I'm hitting my 130 yard club, but I'm ending up short 60% of the time.
Yeah.
I probably need to pick a target that's maybe not 130, I need to hit my 140 club or my 150 club even. Like, that's where I think you can use some of these cool features in the SKYTRAK course play to start to strategize and plan better for when you actually play, which will just help you lower your scores without actually potentially even improving your technique. Like, you could have the same slice, but just pick better targets and score better, just by knowing kind of where you miss and what your tendencies are.
Yeah, well, hopefully I don't have that slice forever.
Correct. That's the ideal situation. So those are kind of the first two things you talked about. The last one you discussed was your hitting different shots out of different like lies and different situations. So obviously, hitting off of the simulator, your lie is always going to be really good.
Yeah.
Now, there is a cool feature in here that's that lie penalty piece that I think could help a lot of the golfers out there at least start to understand and identify when you're in one of those weird situations like rough or in a bunker, like just how penalizing that can be. So we can kind of look at that and talk through it. We'll just continue to kind of use that same pitching wedge club if you're cool with that.
Yeah.
So going up here, we'll use the same hole. Instead of hitting out of the fairway, if we did kind of the same thing, but we went 95 yards out of the rough, now you'll notice that you've got, I kind of put you behind a tree, so this makes it a little harder. I'll move you here in just a second, but I wanted to just show the power piece. So like when you're hitting out of thicker grass, the distance you actually hit a shot is going to be diminished.
Yeah.
Now, some of that obviously plays a role in like when you're out on the course, you can identify like how good is the lie, is it sitting up, is it really thick grass, is it wet? You know, all those pieces that go into just maybe being a little bit more of an advanced player, but at least you can start to recognize and understand, okay, when I have a 95-yard shot out of the rough, I probably need to hit this more like a 110, 115-yard shot, just because of the friction and the amount of resistance that the grass is going to give you.
Yeah.
So I think that's a really cool way to practice this. I'm not going to make you hit from behind this tree.
Thank you.
I will move
so
you.
kind of you.
I'll be much nicer than that. But it still is a good way to understand and recognize like just where you could potentially, you know, change clubs based on the situation that you have. So we'll take you to 90 yards here. We'll just say you hit a really wayward second shot. But we're still in the rough, so we still got that same lie penalty, same reduction in the spin. All of that's exactly what would happen in real life.
Yeah.
You're just hitting off of a perfect lie indoors. So you can start to kind of plan and say, okay, if this is the case of like a shot I had on the course, I might need to pretend this is more like a 110 yard shot and start to pick a club that way. So you have your pitching wedge.
I do.
That's your 110 club. In theory.
In theory.
Okay.
Yeah, we'll see if it actually
So
plays
let's hit one and we can kind of see just where you end up relative to kind of what we would expect. So about a 10 to 15% reduction should get us kind of close to that 90 yard if you hit it pretty good.
Okay, let's see.
Good strike.
Oh.
So you can see just a little shorter than maybe you planned on it.
Yeah.
Again, that could just be part of how you hit that. I think that came out a little lower than you normally hit a pitching wedge. That sounded just a little thin.
Yeah.
But that would be a good way again to use some of these drop anywheres, the lie penalty piece, just to practice some different scenarios and kind of put yourself under the pressure situation like you talked about of, okay, when I actually get on the course, this is a shot you probably have to deal with at some point. Hopefully not. Hopefully you're in every fairway and you hit every green and you never have to hit a shot out of the rough, but that's generally not how it works. So it just gives you another way to practice and work on some of those skills.
And I actually have a tip for everyone at home. If you want to practice high pressure situations, put 2 cameras in front of you.
There you go.
And practice hitting.
Yep.
Yeah, that definitely helps.
Post the videos in the comments below. There you go.
Post some videos in the comments below. We'll see how everyone does.
Josh and Lexi will analyze your swing.
Yeah.
There you go. That was a better strike.
Yeah.
Pulled that one just a little bit, but you can see how the distance was kind of right around that 90, 95 yardage that you were looking for. So again, I wouldn't necessarily worry about, did you hit the green? Did you miss the green? It's more just understanding how far the ball flies, what the actual penalty would be for hitting in thicker grass. Because I think that's one thing that when you're playing simulator golf that just gets overlooked. We always have a perfect lie. We can hit pretty much any club we want. That's just not how real golf is played. So it just gives you another way to make this a little more realistic and then actually transition these skills to the golf course. Yeah,
definitely. And maybe this is just me, but I had no idea that the spin was reduced, let's say average, obviously it depends on a real course, by 75%, and power is reduced by 85 to 90%. That's definitely a way bigger reduction than I was thinking. So that in itself definitely opens up my mind to how much I do need to adjust my swing when I'm actually on the course.
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you get in that thicker grass where there's more material between the club face and the golf ball, that's just gonna reduce the spin, which is just gonna make it harder for that golf ball to stop. So you see that all the time when you're watching pros play and they get in that thicker grass, that ball tends to just roll out a little bit more on the green. It doesn't stop quite as quickly, doesn't spin back quite as much, just because of the extra material that's essentially between where the golf ball and the club face are. And that just gets magnified and changes when you start adding things like moisture, you start adding things like elevation, wind plays a role, like all those other pieces that kind of boil into how a golf professional hits a shot. There's just a lot to think about, but
so much.
This is one way that you can kind of practice that, where you can sort of simplify it and be in more of a controlled environment where you don't have to drop 15 golf balls and hit out of that thick grass. And I'm pretty sure your superintendents will like you a little bit more too when you're just hitting off of a mat instead of hacking up the rough all the time.
Definitely. Cool, well, I think I know what to work on, and hopefully you guys at home got a few ideas for how to use this new update to improve. Hope you enjoy it. Try it out and let us know in the comments what you think.
Post those swing videos.
Yeah, post those swing videos.